Hey babies, how you doing today? I want to come on here and talk about a message I've had in my spirit about making it to our promised lands. Perhaps this message is going to resonate most with people who are waiting in the wilderness. If you are in a season of wondering what's next, if you are in a season of feeling like you can't hear from God, if you are in a season of understanding that there's a promise on your life but not seeing the fruition of it, this message is probably going to be for you. My name is Sherry. This is my page, Exiting Egypt, where we focus on healing and self-love for you. And I know it's been a while since I've been on here, but I have been prompted to come back and start recording and spreading messages of love and hope and teaching on the healing and self-love journey. And today I want to talk about feeling forgotten. Today I want to talk about the idea of being in a waiting pattern and wondering if you're ever going to get out. Today I want to talk about reaching the promised lands. You see, I'm in a season of waiting. I am in a season of wilderness experience. And it's probably because this is what I teach, right? It's probably because most of the people who are attached to me are also in wilderness seasons. And it's only fair and right that I would have a season of that myself. I will say that in the past, that season was because I was in my healing journey. I was in the middle of my healing at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. I left a very toxic relationship and I went into a season of waiting for my healing. I had a lot of hard work to do in that season. The wilderness felt long and dry, and many times I wanted to turn around and go back. I wanted to start over again with people and places and things that no longer served my life. I wanted to give up on myself many times in the middle of the wilderness. And so when I finally got through that season, when I finally made it to this promised land of healing that God had very clearly let me know would happen, I came out and I started teaching. I started my page on TikTok, Instagram, and also here on YouTube at that time. And I started just telling people messages about healing and self-love and that it was possible. But I won't say, once I reached that place, once I finally got to a place where I felt more confident, that it all worked out the way that I wanted it to. As a matter of fact, it didn't. I thought that I was coming out here and I was going to, be rich and famous. Oh, that's good. That's good. I really did. I thought that's what it was. I thought that I left my job at the beginning of 2022. I made a plan to start doing these workshops and doing these group sessions. And I will say some of the things worked out. I will also say I didn't know my full worth and what I should be asking for when I offered the services. I'll also say that there were many times I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. I'll also say that there were many people who gave up on themselves during the process, which then put me in a position of not knowing what I was doing next. I'll say also, I did see some beautiful things happen. From 2022 to the beginning of 2023, I have graduated 10 groups, 10 warrior groups, and that's over 40 people have graduated from my program, and they are living great lives. And I'm so thankful for that. On top of that, my social media influence has grown, and I've had this great opportunity to bless and touch lives, letting people know and encouraging them to keep going. So I'm grateful for those experiences. But here I sit again in another wilderness. Here I sit again in a moment of wondering what's next. And it can be so hard when we're wondering what's next. It can be so scary. It can be so just terrifying to not know what the next thing is. And I really wanted to let someone know today, don't you give up in the middle of your wilderness. Don't you give up in the middle of wondering what's next. Perhaps you're wondering if you're going to heal, if you'll ever feel better than you do today. You've probably let go of some things and you really felt in your spirit that that was going to be it. I just need to let go of that person. I just need to let go of that place. I just need to let go of that thing and I will be through this. I felt like I've been called to leave. Everything should be fine now. And now you're finding yourself in a situation where you're still sad, where you're still mad, where you're still angry, where you're still missing the situation, where you're still questioning, should I go back there? Yeah, that's a part of healing, baby. And I know it feels really crazy when you're like, I was sure that this was going to be it. I was sure that this was going to end all of my problems. But that's just not how life works. One thing that I've really realized is when we hit one peak, we then go and we go back down, and then we're going to look for another peak. So just like I was sharing about my healing journey, when I hit that healing journey peak, when I had really felt really great, I ended up coming on back down that hill and ended up in another valley where I have to again trust that I am going to make it through. So I wanted to share that with you. I want to share with you, when I think about this, one of the big things that I do is I think about Bible scripture, and I think about some of the stories. My favorite thing in the Bible of all the things are the stories of the people who really struggled in their wilderness seasons, the stories of people who had promises on their lives that they had to wait years and years to come into fruition. Some of my favorite stories about this would definitely have to be first Joseph. Joseph had a calling on his life from a very young boy. He told everyone about the calling. He told his brothers about the calling. He told his father. He told his mother. He's like, I dreamed that people are going to bow down to me and like I'm going to be the head of these things. And instead of getting that right when he had those dreams, he got a lot of hate. His brothers threw him into a pit. He ended up over in another land where he was a servant and then got lied on and ended up in a jail. He waited in the jail, and then finally Pharaoh of that land brought him out and made him head of all of these things. And then he had to feed the people who had put him in that pit. You ever had to feed people who have put you in a pit? You ever had situations where when you finally made it, you then had to go back and be a blessing to someone who had hurt you? Yeah. What I'm saying here is, though, he knew he was called. He knew that the promised land was before him. He just didn't know the timing. And what did he do in that time? He was faithful. He was faithful over the small things. He was a good inmate in that prison. The reason he got out of that prison is because he told some people who were in that prison that, about their dreams and told them not to forget about him. And they still forgot about him. They still forgot about him. It was still not till years later that he finally got to this place where he could be there for others, where he could see the fruition of this dream in his heart. Let's fast forward a little bit. After that situation, of course, I love Exiting Egypt was built on the Bible. It's built off of the scriptures in Exodus with Moses and the people, the Israelites, and they're waiting. They're waiting in their wilderness season. That many people had to die waiting in their wilderness season, and many people lived. And they went on to see the promises. But I'm sure it was hard. I know for a fact they tried to go back. That is why I created Exiting Egypt, was based off of the idea, not that they got out of Egypt, but the fact that they wanted to go back to Egypt because they were so uncomfortable in the midst of their wilderness. They just could not see the possibility of reaching their promised land. Have you ever just wanted to go back in the midst of your wilderness? Have you wondered if you would be able to make it through? Yeah, I know I have. So let's fast forward a little bit from this lineage of people who did eventually make it to the promises that God had for their life and go on to King David. One of my favorite. Baby, King David is one of my favorites in the Bible, and my spirit reminds me all the time of him because King David, when he was young, Samuel came and poured oil over his head and said he was going to be king. He was just a lowly shepherd boy. He was told he was going to be king. After that, King David slayed a giant. After that, King David played the lyre for the king at the time, Saul. After that, King David went on and did all of these things where he was being hunted and they tried to kill him. He hid out in caves. He prayed to God to please get his enemies. It took him a long time before he ever was king. Do you ever feel haunted? Like it's not going to work out for you? Like all you see is trouble up ahead, but you've had a promise in your heart that things are going to be different? Yeah. I share all of this today to remind someone who hears this message. Don't you give up in the middle of your wilderness. The promise is still coming into fruition. No, it may not look like you wanted to. No, it may not feel like you wanted to. No, it may not be the way you wanted it to. Many of us have hopes and dreams and things that are not for our lives. And many of us have hopes and dreams and things that will eventually come into fruition, just maybe not the way you wanted to. I'm wearing my shirt today. It says, I had a plan, but God had a better one. Yeah, the reason for that is because my plan is not working out exactly the way that I wanted to. But God told me to come and get on this video because God has a better plan. So if this message is for you, if this message blesses your heart, please leave a message below and let me know what you received from it. Please let me know I'm on the right track. But please also be encouraged, baby. It won't always be like this. Don't you give up in the midst of your healing. Don't you give up in the midst of your leveling up. Don't you give up just because you feel like everyone else is giving up on you. Don't you give up because you can't see it yet. Don't you give up because you can't feel it yet. Don't you give up, baby. You will get through this. It is only a season, not a lifetime. And this too shall pass. You remember that as you keep going today. You hear me? Be blessed and keep going. Keep going, baby. Keep going.